But let's go ahead and jump into our early review of the game Synced by Next Studios. A new game. It's free to play on the Epic Game Store. Epic Games, holler at me. But it's free to play on the Epic Game Store. It is a co-op, futuristic, extraction, looter, shooter, RPG, roguelike, action adventure game. All right, let's clap it up for all the genres that this game hits. When we're talking about our game reviews that we do here on this channel, y'all know me. Y'all know I love to talk about three, major things that I think every game has to have. And we're going to talk about all three things today. The first, and which we always get into one way or another, is talking about the story. The tutorial that we originally get into and can go back later and kind of go a little bit more into detail about is the fact that you have access to this database where we can look into the actual storyline, the lore, all the different aspects of the game. The tutorial does a really good job of setting the framework. You're in this futuristic dystopian world where you have to fight for your life because of this alien corruption that has morphed the landscape that you're in and really caused you and everybody around to rethink how you're actually going to, do the basic thing, survive. And with that, the storyline, although I wouldn't say it's the strongest storyline that we've seen in a game like this, it's pretty hard to compare it to other games, but if there was something, I think maybe it feels like a rogue company or veiled experts with aliens, right? Just in terms of like a potential frame of reference for folks who played those games. But when you have a storyline that is talking about space, I'm sorry, but I'm just one of those people where I don't think you have to talk about quantum theory and string theory and, all the different aspects of the universe and Big Bang and, time travel. I don't think you have to do that to have a solid story. And for the type of game that this is, it's really focused on the gunplay. All you really need to know is that you have aliens that you're fighting, and with the aliens and how the world and literally Earth's surface has shifted because of this infestation, and now also the ability to sync with some of these aliens called Nanos, you then have the ability to, fight back against this invasion from this alien race. And so knowing that, it's a pretty basic, fight for your life, adapt to the new reality of a dystopian world, I think is good enough. What takes this up a notch, right? If we're giving it, a scale, on a scale of 1 to 5, I think that alone, what we just talked about, that alone gives it like a 2 out of 5. What brings it up to like a 3, if not a 4 out of 5, is the fact that we actually have these really cool vignettes. I'm not going to click it on right now because it'll play, but we have these really cool vignettes that as you're playing the game, you do get to get these different kind of sides of who the villains actually are in this. Like originally when you're going through the tutorial, you kind of take this like broad approach that, the aliens who are invading are at fault. But then once you start to see some of these and listen to some of these rather, these additional storylines, these pieces of memories that they call them in game, these lore bits and pieces, you start to see that there's actually corporate actors who are corrupt, who are taking advantage of the situation and really making life hard for everyday people. You start to understand that like some of the ways that they're choosing to interact with the Nano, which are this alien race that we are both fighting alongside and fighting with, you see that there are these people in power who are actually taking advantage of those abilities and manipulating them and twisting them to their own deeds, and the fact evil deeds we would call them. And so the fact that this depth of story is told, again, I'm not going to sit here and act like it's Nobel Peace Prize winning literature or Pulitzer Prize winning literature, but the fact that you have at least this level of story in a game like this where it doesn't even have to be about the story, yet you have these bits and pieces that add layers to the overall experience. It gets you immersed, right? We talk about that a lot on this channel. It gets you immersed in the gameplay and it gets you immersed in the story. Again, yes, are there going to be people who just boot up this game and start PvP or PvE and just start playing? Absolutely. But overall, the fact that you're fighting for something, fighting for a cause, and you're also fighting alongside other people who are in this game, you know, physically, you know, you're match made playing with these people across the world, but then also you have people who are fighting arm in arm, you know, when we're talking about, you know, this nano, this alien takeover, and also adapting to the new reality that you're in. So for me, knowing that that is part of the story, and it didn't have to be, they could have just kept it like alien infestation, fight back. They literally could have done that, but the fact that they chose not to me says a lot. So I really appreciated it, and I think overall we can give the story a pretty solid 4 out of 5. Next up, we gotta talk about it. We gotta talk about gameplay. So when we get into the game, the core aspects, if the NPCs stop interrupting me, the core aspects of the game are being able to do PvP and PvE. Yes, there are some in-game activities, but again, they're just harder versions of PvP and PvE. But with PvE, when you look at this, you have multiple levels that you can engage in, right? So you have your core ops playlist, and then you have your master ops playlist and master ops plus. Again, these are harder difficulty, you know, when you get all the way up there. But when you're just at the base level of what you would do when you boot up the game you're playing with friends, you have the ability to either do team play or solo play. Having done both team play and solo play for me, even at some of the different difficulty levels, on the whole, scaled down to enemy density and difficulty that I think was fine for one person, but overall, I wouldn't sit there and grind that out for hours. It really wasn't super engaging, and it felt like a lot of the times it was a pushover, especially because the progression system in the game allows you the opportunity to level up your weapons. Once you get your weapons to that purple or gold level, so many enemies just melt, and it's really not even a challenge. So the fact that like solo play is probably good when you're bored or just no one else that you can play with is on, but you do have the ability to do team play, which again, it may just be subjective, it may just be all in my head, but it did feel like the enemy density did go significantly up, at least like an estimated 20% more enemies when you actually played in a team. So not only are you going through the match-made system, but you have the ability to engage with folks. It is an extraction looter shooter style game, you know, defeat the enemies, capture the zones, protect the zones, extract and get out safely. It's better with friends than I would say in the solo play experience. What will make the solo play experience overall better is to actually have a little bit more difficulty, or just have a different mechanic that is embedded that you can't get from team play, because otherwise, why not just play team play? Why not just boot up and play with friends? In the matchmaking sense, so far we've had a pretty good experience with matchmaking. This is a newer game, so there are probably higher populations, and you know, populations tend to go down over time. But the fact is, like right now, the matchmaking not only felt really good with who I was being teamed up with in terms of skill level, but also in terms of, you know, just being able to get it done pretty quickly. It did glitch out, admittedly. For folks who are going to watch the full VOD back later, you'll notice that it did glitch out early, and so we had to restart the animation a couple times before we actually did it. But once we got over the glitch, it was pretty fast. The match made that to happen, and I would say it was like 5-6 seconds. Again, we are on the North American server, and yeah, it was a pretty fast matchmaking experience. So for me, I really don't have many complaints, other than the fact that when we're talking about the gameplay loop itself, it's nice to go out there and kill enemies and take, you know, advantage of the environment and skill up and try out different builds, but it just didn't capture me the way I thought it was going to be. Even on harder difficulties, the ability to like push over enemies or just have a really strong build that works really well. Even the fact that right now, the healer builds, when you're matchmaking with the person who knows how to put together a healer build, it's so ridiculously good. Like, it is, I don't want to say game breaking, but it is so good where like some of the engagements in this realm, especially when you get to tyrants, which are kind of the bosses of these PvE experiences, the tyrants even felt like pushovers where I'm not even really taking damage, because not only is my personal build really good for taking out low tier enemies, we had somebody on our team pretty consistently who was a tank and was able to like really be up in the face of the boss and do damage. And then we had a healer who just threw down the healing circle, and we were just sitting there getting healed. Again, for my Destiny 2 fans, it was basically having a solar warlock with Well of Radiance, right? And so we're just sitting there, not only getting you know, the safety of that healing, but being able to dish out a good amount of damage when you upgrade your weapons over time in the experience. So again, is this something I do with friends? Yes. Is this something I recommend you do alone? No. So that is something to keep in mind in terms of the gameplay loop, what you can expect from PvE. When you dive into PvP, so far, again, we haven't grinded out a bunch of PvP, but PvP, PvP, I was, you know, again, we've been grinding for a while. We've done the intro mission. We had done some of the stuff, and we're kind of getting to the groove of it. And I won't say I was getting bored, but it was just, I mean, the energy was kind of starting to die off. But then we started our first match of PvP, and oh my God. Bruh. It was so delicious. It was action-packed. I honestly, for folks who play Destiny 2, this is what I think Gambit is supposed to be like. The AI enemies in the game, who are actually pretty skilled. Again, they're not just pushover enemies. They have movement tech. They're actually engaged with the environment. They're giving you a challenge. Not only that, you're fighting against the clock, against another team. And you have to capture these zones, have more nerve than the other team. You only have 3 lives. If you get killed 3 times, you're completely out of the game. Right? So just all these different factors that make it a really fun, fast-paced environment. Honestly, if you would have told me this was the only aspect of the game, not only would I not have complained, but I also would have applauded you. It is such a refreshing take on what we typically see in extraction shooters. Other games, again, if you're talking about similar but not same in the genre, I think the Cycle is maybe a close reference point to this, where yes, you have PvP and you're in there and you're fighting against the fauna and flora who are dangerous, and you're trying to survive and grab loot and extract, and then you're also fighting other, you know, IRL people who are matchmade in that server. This is just different from the fact that, like, it adds that additional objective on top. The fact that you're not only trying to loot and have the best gear, but you're also making sure that you have synergy amongst your teammate. You're also making sure that you're going to each of the Nerva sites and being able to, like, efficiently capture those sites before the other sites. Again, which one do you prioritize? A, B, or C? There's so many different factors that you're doing on top of fighting the clock, on top of also fighting people that you're teamed up against. So, like, for me, when I'm thinking about what this game's identity is, if I were to explain this game to a friend or someone's like, hey, would you want to play this game? It's free to play, really cool opportunity. This is what I'd actually describe the game. I don't even think I would mention the PvE side of the game. Bruh. Sorry, not sorry. The PvE side has let me down so much that, like, I feel like it's not fair to group them together, because typically when we're talking about gameplay loop, which is a topic we're on, we typically group them all together, PvP and PvE. And honestly, PvE is kind of a 1.5, 2 out of 5 experience. It's really one-dimensional. Even on the higher difficulty settings, it's really not that difficult. And honestly, if you have an OP build, or at least right now before any real nerfs go into the game, whether it's a healer build, a tank build, or a support build, or just doing one of the rogue classes, it kind of trivializes the experience, and I just wasn't expecting that. And again, maybe that can be addressed with some nerfs and some tuning, but ultimately, even if it got adjusted and you weren't doing as much damage and the enemies were more challenging in PvE, it can't touch the PvP side, because PvP just has the additional factors, those variables of fighting against time, only having 3 lives before you're fully eliminated, knowing that you have to, you know, be able to capture the objectives, and the objectives are far away, right? And not even necessarily a bad way. They're far away, in which you really have to strategize. What point are you going to capture first? What are you going to prioritize? And also, how are you going to make sure your 3-person team synergizes the best to make sure that you're able to capture the zones in a way that's going to allow you to do it efficiently, but also prioritize taking out the other team, because that's also strategy, right? Your strategy could be not even thinking about capturing zones. It could be making sure you eliminate the other team as fast as possible. There's so many different strats you can do with this, and because of the skill set that, you know, you'll be the skill set of players that you'll be put up against over time as you get higher and higher in the ranks, there's almost an infinitely scalable, infinitely with the asterisk, infinitely scalable opportunity to continue to be challenged in this aspect of the game. So if we're saying that PvE is generously saying it's a 2 out of 5 experience, it's kind of one dimensional, really doesn't excite my brain, and it really wasn't something that I would really suggest with a friend. PvP, my God, I definitely would absolutely recommend this side to friends. This is something I would boot up any day of the week and just be like, hey, yo, you trying to get on some PvP, you trying to play a little synced, like I think about that, the action of veiled experts. I think about a little bit of that mixture of Fortnite, right? When you talk about the inventory management side of Fortnite, there's a little bit of Apex, right? Apex, when you have to think about your legend and what setup you're going to use. Like, there's so many different aspects of really good games that is funneled into the PvP side that I think, for me, this is what keeps the game fresh, but it's also what keeps the game interesting. And honestly, I don't say this lightly. I think I give the PvP experience a 4.5 out of 5. Easy. Outside of that, we have several opportunities for folks to engage. So we talked about the archives. The NPCs definitely love talking to you. We have VR. The VR experience was pretty dull, if I had to say so myself. It was a lot of things that were already covered in the tutorial, so it's quite repetitive. The firing range is really kind of bare. It really doesn't give you as much as I think it should in terms of just aesthetic wise, but also in general, there's not really a lot of options. You pick a gun and you shoot a target, sure, and that's the basis of any firing range, but it really doesn't give you any dynamic options like Valorant or Apex, where there's a lot more build crafting testing that you can do in a firing range environment that you really just kind of show up in the firing range here and shoot things, and then you run a course and do some parkour and you leave, and it's kind of a one-time thing, and I can't imagine that I ever go back to doing that again. That in mind, our last two pieces, we got to talk about the vendor system. So with the vendor system, we talked about this a little bit, but I just wasn't really enthused by the level of monetization. It just didn't feel really good knowing that a lot of the characters are behind a paywall. Again, these are characters that have some really great skill sets. They're behind a paywall, and outside of the sale that's going on right now, it's very much similar to what you've seen before, right? The prices for these things normally, when you're going to buy them, are not the same amount that you have to purchase. So either you have to buy the largest pack available, or you have to double up on some of these amounts. So maybe you buy a $19 pack and also a $10 pack. And so with that, that's the way that you get these bundles with the cool emotes, with the cool skins, with the better weapons. Again, these are things that are here. And again, outside of there being sales, even a $19 pass won't get you this basic bundle. It won't get you a lot of bundles. Yes, there are some weapons and there's some emote combinations that are cheaper, but ultimately, I don't know that you're going to the store for emotes, right? Maybe there are some people, but honestly, you're usually going for characters. You're going for weapons, and those things are more expensive, and it is a little bit disappointing to go through that. Besides that, you do have the battle pass. It's linked to, again, the whole experience with having to buy Empyrean. You do have some daily rewards. Again, you see we got some rewards from just playing the game. The NPCs continue to talk over me, but again, you do have abilities to grind out in-game currency. You see right here, you also get, for these daily challenges, you do get battle pass XP, but here's the thing, it really doesn't matter if you don't buy the battle pass. So again, I'm leveling up, but there's so few things in the battle pass that are actually worthwhile. And honestly, the things that are worthwhile in the battle pass you have to pay for. You can't actually just grind out the game. So knowing that there's not even a free gun that you can get is pretty disappointing. That's where we are with the whole process. So again, it's very normalized. I don't call out Next Studios specifically for this, because this is the trend of battle passes in general since battle passes have been popularized, but it is kind of disappointing that this is the system. So that is our shop, so to speak, vendor. And then the other major vendor that we have is the weapons vendor. So again, there are a lot of cool aspects of this experience. Being able to again have this 3D preview is really cool on all weapons. But as we were kind of alluding before, if you don't actually have the right level, again, we did unlock some things because we've grinded out this weapon specifically, but if you don't have the right level for a lot of these things, again, if you don't have the battle pass, if you haven't made it to, level 4, these different aspects where, yes, in some respects, it makes sense that if you have a cool skin or addition or attachment or charm to add to a weapon, then yeah, you have to grind out for it. But because so much is already in the store, it just doesn't feel super great, especially the fact that there's nothing that you can really just unlock by grinding, right? We'd have to go back to the shop for so many of these different aspects. So is it really cool that they had artists to think of the designs and really put in a lot of these cool things? Absolutely. Absolutely, it's cool that they had the option for that, but the fact that ultimately, you still have to engage with the shop in some regard to be able to have something that looks cool, as well as when we look at the ability, again, that was just a customization window. When we look at the ability to change weapons, look at this, look at the graphics, look at the amount of damage you're doing with some of these weapons. It's a really good, but you're gonna have to have the money to be able to pay for it, because nothing in life is free. There's no such thing as free lunch, we understand that, but it being behind a paywall is not the greatest experience, especially when I am very much in favor of an experience wall. I think an experience wall makes sense, that eventually we could grind out and get to a place where we have this shotgun, which again, look at this shotgun, very much Valorant Apex inspired. Look at that. Would you not want this? Very much Apex Valorant inspired. Very cool. Love the geometry. Very cool. I love to have this, but you have to grind for that and really invest not just your time but money.
Appreciate it.
So overall, looking at these pieces, everything coming together, I think I can solidly say this game for me is, just be fair and upfront, it's not a game that I'm gonna sit here and put 2,000 hours into, right? It's not gonna be that game. It is going to be the same level of a game like Farlight 84, Veiled Experts, Rogue Company, all of these games where you have the opportunity to play something that's a little bit different. It's a different style of game. Maybe you're playing this on a community night if you're a streamer or content creator. Maybe you're just hanging with the homies and everybody's playing this because it's a free-to-play game. And shout out again to free-to-play games. We love that. So for me, I think if you're talking about within that realm, we're not talking about a game that you would expect someone to know life and make it their primary game. If you're talking about this is your side piece, if I can be so frank, it's your side piece game. I think this is a very solid 4 out of 5. I think as a side piece game, a game that you pick up, you play once a week. Maybe you play every couple weeks, and every 2 weeks you call up the homies and you play for a good 5-6 hours, and then you put it down for another 2 weeks. This is the type of game that it is. Unless you're really deep into this roguelike, Veiled Experts, The Finals, Rogue Company-esque life, and you really want to double down, you really want to create content on it, I think you could. I think there's a market for it, but these games just don't really have the same audience viewership and engagement. And honestly, I think long-term play value that I think a lot of other AA and AAA titles do have. So is this a bad game? No, by no means is it a bad game. Is this a game that I would play with the homies? Absolutely. I would play this game with the homies. Is this a game that I'm going to put down Starfield for, again, which I'm playing right now? No.
Bruh.
Is it something I'm going to put down Destiny 2 for? No.
Bruh.
But is it something that I can add to the collection of games that when you're sitting there, you're bored with your main game, or you just run out of things to do, or you just feel like you need that spark? You know what I'm doing? When I am booting up this game, I am booting up this and I'm running over to Caraway and I'm playing PvP. I am absolutely 100% running over, hitting up the homies, we're playing PvP, and I think we're gonna have a really good time. If you come in here with the proper expectation level of what you're gonna get out of this game, that it's not gonna be the game that I put down other games for. It's gonna be the game that I enjoy with friends from time to time. I think you will have a lot of fun with this game. I think you're going to enjoy the time, especially PvP. If they make some changes to PvE, maybe. But I think what you're really going to get out of this game is that PvP experience, is hanging with friends. And honestly, I might even put up that clip that we got from the person who was on voice chat. But we had some really cool people. I was expecting people to be toxic. I ain't going to hold you. I was expecting that we was going to have to... but the fact is, so far, at least in our experience, we've run into positive people, and hopefully the community here stays that way. And honestly, whether you're matchmake with the in-game services or whether you're playing with friends, I think this is going to be a really good opportunity. So that's where we're at with the game. Again, this game is called SYNCED. A futuristic free-to-play roguelike action adventure extraction shooter game is available at the Epic Games Store. Free-to-play, co-op, completely free-to-play. I definitely encourage you to pick it up if you're looking for something new, something to spice up your gaming routine, something to spice up, just hanging out with the homies. And ultimately, I think there's a lot to choose from when we're talking about this game. So definitely check it out if you have the time, and we'll go from there. Appreciate your time.